was really good at writing children's lyric songs for children. So myself, Parvati and Ramai, we had a bus party that travelled around New Zealand. So, sorry, I've leaped in time.
What year was that?
No, 72, the deities were coming, but this was in 65. So at that particular point, the deities were all already installed, but Jagannath, Subhadra, Baladev and Gaur Nitai weren't installed at that particular point. So we were travelling around New Zealand, and our temple president, Yasoda Nandana, he brought Gaur Nitai. And I think the story goes that he had to carry them on the plane, but they were really heavy. So he asked some kami, can you take one of the deities? This was, only Yaso could do this. And this is how they brought them back. Of course, Jagannath was the deities of Balaram, and Jagannath used to drive around in the combi van. When the devotees that were living in ISKCON, Siddha and Tusta left, they got back to their desired activities, which were surfing. They were great surfers, and they got little Jagannath deities, which they hung around their neck, and they took them surfing. So Balaram had Jagannath, it was Bhakti Barra then, and he would bring the deities in his car. So when he went shopping, he took Jagannath, Baladev and Subhadra. When he came on Harinam and stopped the combi van on Queen Street, because you could stop anywhere, there would be Jagannath, Subhadra and Balaram. So we were travelling with Ramai, and just prior to that, when we'd go out on Sankirtan, and when we came back one night and Yaso came in, and when the program was you'd do full morning program, you'd go out and do book distribution and Harinam, 6, 7, 8 hours a day, come back, take bath, have your parties and kitri and little sabji. And then you'd go to 7 o'clock Artik, Tulsi Artik, and then we would all eat the 9 o'clock prasad, and we'd go upstairs and have hot milk and bananas. Now the reason we had hot milk and bananas is because we heard Prabhupada liked hot milk and bananas. So every night was a tradition, we had to have hot milk and bananas, because Prabhupada liked hot milk and bananas. And we would read Krishna book, and we would read together. So one day Yaso came and he said, I want you to write to Prabhupada and ask for initiation. So right now, when Yaso, who was a fantastic temple president, gave us an instruction, we basically followed it on the spot. He was such a passionate boy. So I didn't know what to write, so I just opened up the songbook and I wrote the translation to Gurudev, because I heard that Prabhupada liked Shastra. So I thought, wow, you're not going to get better than this. So that was my letter to Prabhupada, and then I wrote at the bottom, please accept me as your disciple. So we're travelling with Ramai, doing book distribution around New Zealand in the bus. He had the first bus party that travelled around New Zealand. And then he called me over one day and he says, we've just got the letter back from Prabhupada, and he's accepted you as his disciple. There was, I think, 8 or 9 of us. And Ramai kept on saying, you've got a really good name. We haven't heard that name together. Ramai was going, I want that name. How come I didn't get that name? And I was going, boy, it must be a far-out name. And so we came back to the temple and Yaso did the initiation. So, but the thing is that Yaso the beads hadn't been chanted on by Prabhupada. So Yaso just got some beads, I don't know who chanted on them, and knowing Yaso, he most probably did, or no one did. So we did the yajna in the temple room, and then he handed our beads and he handed our names, and he says, this is your initiation, you're such and such and such and such. So Srila Prabhupada, who was coming through Melbourne, because we just opened the temple then, or the year before, was coming to install the deities here. By that time, we'd moved to Gribblehurst Road. So Prabhupada found out that Yaso did the initiation, and he says, well, it's bogus. And we're going, thanks, Yas. He says, because I haven't chanted on, they're my disciples, and I haven't chanted on their beads. So he says, I'll come and do the initiation. So Srila Prabhupada came over, and we went to meet him at the airport. And believe it or not, once upon a time I used to be submissive and humble. Long, another birth. I was like the young Bhakta, so, and travelling with Srila Prabhupada was Guru Kripa. Now Guru Kripa, because he was American, it was pretty hard for him to travel in and out of countries, and he could definitely not travel as a devotee. So he got himself a pinstripe suit made up with alligator shoes and a mafia hat. And he was standing in the Melbourne temple, and Prabhupada came down, he looked at him, he goes, "Now we have our own mafia." Guru Kripa Swami. So we didn't know all that was going on, but Guru Kripa is a good friend of mine. He tells me all these far-out stories, what was really happening here in New Zealand and different places around the world. We were there, big kirtan. There was a whole lot of us, one or two. It was packed in those days. I think there was about 15 in the temple. But anyhow, there was hundreds of other devotees that lived outside the temple, a couple of hundred devotees, which belonged to Siddha and Tusta. So the first person to come out the door was Harisori. Not Harisori, was Guru Kripa. Pinstripe mafia hat with a silver briefcase. Real gangster. And he just walks right through the kirtan, basically pushes everyone aside and goes straight and hops in Prabhupada's car, and we're going, "Who the hell is this, mate?" Well, we didn't know who it was, and then Prabhupada came through, and also Paramahamsa Swami, he was with Prabhupada at that particular point, and there was some mix-up with the luggage, so I volunteered because I was humble and submissive, and I was wearing saffron, so I thought I'd at least play the part. I thought, well, I'll stay back, and Paramahamsa Swami says, well, I'll stay back with you, because Prabhupada's luggage hadn't come through. So Prabhupada and the entourage, they came back to Gribblehurst Road, and Prabhupada's room was upstairs. I'll get to that in a moment. So I was at the airport with Paramahamsa. We waited for about half an hour, picked up the luggage and came back. And when we were driving back, this was all farmland. It was all orchards, and the road that comes along here was like the main road that goes from here to the city. It was only 2 lane, or maybe about 10 or 20 cars on it at any particular time. So we were driving past, going through the suburbs, and Paramahamsa noticed the people playing soccer and football, and then he goes, "Do you know where it was started, this soccer?" And I went, "Europe somewhere." He says, "No, the spiritual world." So he was relating, Krishna plays, with the ball, and he has so many pastimes, and these people are just imitating. So we arrived back at Gribblehurst Road, and we really weren't sensitive to Prabhupada's diet at that particular point. He was more like on a health food diet, but we'd arranged good old Hare Krishna food, curd sabji with no vegetables, because we're thinking Prabhupada's got to like the curd, we love it. So the cooks made this big curd sabji and put it all on the plate with some puris and so on, and they took it into Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhupada just tasted a few things, and just as me and Paramahamsa arrived back, the prasadam, the whole plate, had gone from Prabhupada's desk out to the door, and just by Prabhupada's room was a little foyer and a little kitchen. And so the plate arrived in there, was a full plate of Mahaprasadam. So me and Paramahamsa thought, well, we missed out on everything else, I'll go your halves. So we ate it off the plate. In those days, we didn't know too much about etiquette, but I was always taught one thing: there's no etiquette when it comes to maha. You'll do anything, big, bowl or steel, but somehow or other get some maha. So we didn't even think about washing the plate. We just sat on the floor and we ate Prabhupada's maha. So of course, when you have Prabhupada's maha from Prabhupada, I must admit, it is pretty ecstatic. It is pretty nectar. So then so then morning came, and then it came time for our initiation. So I'd been up about a week before that, and as I mentioned at the retreat, my service was to go out and get flowers. So the council had just planted these flowers all down Queen Street in the middle. You had the street on one side and down the middle. You know, every year they plant flowers and they're like nearly developed. So we had an old van. So at 1 a.m, I drove down one side of Queen Street with the door open and I pulled them all out. And I basically loaded them in the van, and then I came back and I planted them around the temple. And Yasso says, "Wow, you're really good at this, Carla." They grew so nicely, and I didn't see them yesterday, but now they're there. And so we stayed up for about a week. We didn't sleep. It was the only week since I met the devotees in 72 that I never chanted 16 rounds a day, because there was just too much happening. We had to do so much. But I made up for those rounds when Prabhupada left later on. So anyhow, I was the needs to be done, do it. So Yasso says, you need to build the yagna pit. I didn't know what a yagna pit was. All I knew was when I went shooting, you know, when we cooked up the duck or the... I'm just joking. When we cooked up what we shot, we made a big fire out of boulders. You know, we got boulders and we put them around. So I thought, that's the only fire I know. So I brought in these big boulders. And Gribblehurst Road's, the temple was quite small, so the yagna was like this. You know, it was all these boulders, and I thought, gee, that's a pretty good fire yagna. And then in the gaps, I just stuck the flowers and the fruit. So then Prabhupada came down from upstairs, and he sat on his asana, and he kept on looking at it. And I thought, oh no, he's going to really get on my case. But he didn't say anything. He was mostly so amused, thinking, this is a Kiwi thing or something. So we did the yagna, and because we were so tired, Prabhupada was sitting there like just right here, and Guru Kripa was doing the fire. So we were all falling asleep. There was myself, Parvati, Sarvaksha, different devotees. We were just falling asleep, and Guru Kripa was throwing sticks at us to wake us up. We were going like, oh God, when's it going to finish? You know, because you're so tired you just want to go to sleep. And then he just stops everything and he goes, you guys fall asleep one more time, I'm calling the whole thing off. And we were thinking he was more powerful than Prabhupada, because he was sitting there thinking, Jesus, this guy's going to call it off. So matchsticks, you know, somehow or other we were trying to stay awake. But because he scared us so much, if you hadn't known Guru Kripa in those days, he was such a fantastic, heavy sannyasi, like super duper heavy. So he shocked us so much that we woke up. And so they did the fire yagna, and Prabhupada called us up. Here's your beads, your name's Kalasamvara. What are the regulated principles? I said I wouldn't have a clue. He says, well, see you later. I'm just joking. We said the regulated principles and we sat down. So then we started the installation of Gaurnitai and Jagannath. So Prabhupada was on his asana, and I was standing next door to Prabhupada, and I was thinking, I'd really like to do some menial service. I'd like to fan Prabhupada with the chamra or the whisk. So everyone was up there, you know, looking at the deities, getting the deities together, and then all of a sudden the chamra came through the crowd. They all handed the chamra down, and I was standing by Prabhupada and I went, oh man. You know how people say this is Krishna's mercy? We didn't used to think like that in those days. I was thinking, wow, I was desiring it. So I got to fan Prabhupada. So I was so tired that when I was fanning Prabhupada, the whisk would go right down Prabhupada's face and body. And I think, oh no. You know, typical Kiwi, no respect for Guru, the Acharya. But Prabhupada, he didn't even blink an eye. Well, he blinked an eye, but you know, he didn't turn to me and go, you know what you're doing, boy? You know, I've just initiated. You're supposed to know what to do. I'm your guru. You're supposed to fan. No, so I continued fanning. Now, we were really together in those days. So we were going to install Gaurnitai. We didn't have any crowns. Jagannath Subhadra Baladev, we didn't have any garlands. So I'm fanning Prabhupada, I'm in ecstasy, and then Yaso taps me on the back and he goes, go and make some garlands for Jagannath. So if he had asked me today, I wouldn't have done it. But that was in my humble days. So I handed the whisk to someone else. I went and made the garlands for Jagannath. We put them on Jagannath. And so then we started the Abhishek. Now, the paint had dried on Jagannath. So we started putting the yogurt and the water, and Jagannath's paint started to run. Prabhupada couldn't see this. He was still on the asana, and everyone was up the front. And Guru Kripa goes up to Yaso and he goes, Yaso, what's going on here? You don't deserve to have these deities. It's just a disaster. But Yaso was so cool and collective, he just picked up the drum and started to kirtan. And so that was the installation of the deities. Now, at Gauni Thai, they were installed for our bus program. We had a bus, but we wanted Gauni Thai. So they weren't installed to be on the altar. They were actually festival devotees. Well, they are devotees. Festival deities. So we took them out around New Zealand or around the North Island. Also, and then Jagannath, of course, you know the pastime with Jagannath where Yaso asked Prabhupada, we want to install Jagannath, and Prabhupada said, because Yaso, you know, when you're with Prabhupada, your heart was beating 1,000,000 miles an hour. It was like, it was hard to take control of your senses. So when Prabhupada spoke to you, your heart was out here. You know, they didn't have like the iWatch and the iPhone where you could check your heart monitor. So it was so powerful being in Prabhupada's presence that, you know, your heart was like bouncing like a cartoon. It was bouncing out of your chest, you know, and you were very nervous. So Prabhupada says to Yaso, what do you want to install Jagannath for? And Yaso couldn't come up with anything. But the next morning he came to Prabhupada and says, well, we want to install Jagannath so we can have Rath Yatra. And Prabhupada says, very nice. And we installed Jagannath. So I was thinking two nice things that are happening, like tonight we took Prabhupada to Govardhan. So I'm hoping in the future, either this generation or the next generation will build a bullock cart, because Prabhupada's last desire was to actually go around Govardhan in a bullock cart, if you read the pastimes. And he asked Lokanath Maharaj. That was the whole rasa. You know, Lokanath was getting the cart together because it was Prabhupada's desire, and Tamal and all the other devotees were saying, no, you can't take Prabhupada. Prabhupada, you can't go. So there was a whole rasa that was developing. So I'm sure Prabhupada will be so pleased that he sees the deity still worshipped so gorgeously. And now we have Govardhan Hill, and we're building Radhakund and Shamakund. And so on days like this, we can get a bullock cart and take Prabhupada around Govardhan. So I think that's what you do. Someone asked, I think on the festival, what's the connection between outreach preaching and Nuvarshan? So when I was a young bhakta, I used to travel an hour and a half just to see the smiling face of Giridhari. There's a saying that don't go to the banks of the Jamuna and see the beautiful form of Govinda, because you'll become captivated. So I'd walk an hour and a half just to see the smile of Giridhari. Actually, when I became a pujari, I didn't even know how to put the turban on. I don't think I ever saw a turban. I would come every Sunday and walk from in the city to Grubblehurst Road, and I'd walk in and see Giridhari's smile, and I'd go, Giridhari's happy with me. And because he's happy with me, there can be no problem. So I would do that for an hour and a half. So we've got to realise that actually the deities were installed by the Acharya. We spend like $1,700, $2,000, and we travel for 14 hours, 15 hours, 16 hours. We have to get a visa. We have to go through so much troublesome for the body to move the body from New Zealand to go to Vrindavan and go to Mayapur and go to Jagannath Puri. And one of the main reasons we go apart from hearing and chanting and glorifying the Lord is to see the deities of the acharyas. Rupa Goswami, we go to Jaipur to see Govindaji, which is famous deity, gorgeous deity. So we have to understand, if we're reading Prabhupada's books and reading Prabhupada's Leelamrita, that Prabhupada, who's the founder and Acharya, who's done more than any other Acharya. No other Acharya has done what Srila Prabhupada has done. He's brought the holy name to the West. He's brought Braj to the West, and because of his potency, Braj is manifesting. So what's the connection? If nothing else at all, just come and see the smiling face of Govinda. See the smiling face of Radha Giridhari. See the dancing form of Lord Chaitanya. See the beautiful form of Jagannath, which is the form of Krishna in samadhi and ecstasy. So, and then do some service for the Lord. Do some menial service. You don't need to be asked what to do. No one should be asked to do something. If you walk past some rubbish, you pick it up. If the windows need to be cleaned, you clean them. If the floor needs to be cleaned, you clean it. The toilets need to be cleaned, you clean them. You just take it on yourself. You become mature by chanting this Nam Sankirtan, by chanting the holy names of the Lord. It should enter the heart and purify the heart and purify the... So, what is Radharani like? When I see the deities are not opening, Prabhupada would come every morning, and at 7:30 we would open the curtains on the dot, and then behind the curtains I'd have all the frankincense, and the curtain would open, like in Melbourne and Sydney and Auckland, the curtain would open and frankincense would just pour out, and Prabhupada would be there with a big smile. He just loved it so much. Of course, we're not Prabhupada, and we sort of don't like frankincense, which I've picked up in this temple. But anyhow, that's something that Prabhupada established. But he demanded that the deities were open at a particular time. Punctuality was there. So what does Radha like? She likes punctuality and cleanliness. So we became clean by chanting. And then because Radharani likes cleanliness, we want to clean for Radha. So when you go back to the spiritual world, which you're all going, there's no doubt about it, you're all going back to the spiritual world, even in this lifetime, then you'll hook up with somebody or a group. So you should know what to do. Prabhupada says when we go back to the spiritual world, we're not tourists. We don't just turn up in the spiritual world and Radharani goes, can you help in your kitchen? You go, I'm just a looker. I've just come to check out things. And so, well, are you going to do anything? Oh, am I supposed to do something, am I? Yeah. Yeah, you are. You're supposed to assist me, so I can assist your guru who's assisting me to assist Sham. So this is our apprenticeship. Our apprenticeship is how to cook for Krishna, how to dress for Krishna, how to sing for Krishna. And even of course, Prabhupada, one devotee asked Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, is this Sankirtan? Is this the mood of the gopis? Who was that devotee? The book distributor? Big book distributor there? Tripurari, because even when Prabhupada was personally here, Tripurari would continue doing his book distribution, and Prabhupada was very pleased. So Tripurari says, Prabhupada, is this the mood of the Sankirtan devotee, Harinam and book distribution? And Prabhupada says, yeah, this is the mood of the gopis, because the mood of the gopis is to bring everyone to Krishna. So this is the mood of the book distributors. They're like the gopis. They're going out and they're capturing people and they're bringing them back to Krishna. Prabhupada says, yeah, this is very nice. On that note, like I said a couple of months ago, and also you've met these devotees now because they're up with Buddhi Manta. Last year when we were touring around India and we were going to Puri, I was in the Vrindavan place where you book taxis and that. So I was sitting there booking my flight to go down to South India, and there was one young couple there, husband and wife. I think they're husband and wife, and they were talking, and I was talking, and they go, "Oh, Kiwi." And I go, "Yeah, Kiwi." I go, "And where are you two from?" And he says, we're from New Zealand also. And I says, "What are you doing here?" And they says, "We were on the west coast and we picked up a book, the Srimad Bhagavatam. And we started reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. I think they were dairy farmers, you know. So they picked up the Bhagavatam, the husband and the wife, and they started reading the Bhagavatam. And then they ordered a set of Bhagavatams, and they were reading them together. And then they Googled Hare Krishnas because they wanted to find out more. And they were lucky because they got a good site. So on the site, Radhanath's site came up, and the Chowpatty community came. So immediately they booked a flight and went to Chowpatty for 2 weeks. This is just by the Bhagavatam. So they were sitting, they'd gone to Chowpatty, they were chanting, reading, young devotees, but they'd read, you should go to Vrindavan and go to the places of acharyas. So immediately they got to Vrindavan, even though they were tired, the lady was a little sick. I says, "Are you going to take some rest?" He goes, "No, in the Bhagavatam it says you should go to Vrindavan and go to the temples of the acharyas." So they booked the temples to go to, and off they went. And I said, "Yeah, cool." I says, "What are you doing when you get back to New Zealand?" They says, "We're going up north." I said, "Contact this devotee Buddhimanta and you can work with them. So maybe you've met them." So I'm bringing up this story because it's glorifying Prabhupada and it's glorifying book distribution. And Prabhupada told us the damage has been done. And I was thinking, geez, what have we done now? He said, the books have been planted. You might blow it, because he's also told us, his disciples, you all want to just go to the heavenly planets, because we're enjoyers. As you can see, I'm an enjoyer. You know, even though I'm not supposed to be an enjoyer, I am an enjoyer. So Prabhupada says, this is the problem with my disciples. They're not scared of Maya, and they just want to go to the heavenly planets. So Prabhupada said, even if you blow it, even if you destroy this whole society, the damage has been done, because my books are out there, and someone will pick up the book and they'll start the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So that's the glory of Prabhupada, that's the glory of Srila Prabhupada's books. And what is the International Society for Krishna Consciousness? It's the incarnation of Krishna in the Kali Yuga. I could just go on forever, but I'll stop. So that's a bit of Prabhupada nectar, a bit of history, and a bit about book distribution. So, yeah. One thing I'll try and tell you, that immediately you take up something, someone's going to try and get you to stop it. You have to be really mature as devotees, because generally everyone likes us. You know, the golf course people like us. There's a house over the road from the temple there. If you look out the door, it's the black and white house. Now, they built their house there. They're Westerners, very rich, respectable Westerners. They built their house there, and their bedroom's about the size of this whole temple, and it looks right out onto the chakra. They says, we picked this spot so we could wake up in the morning and see the sun bouncing off the chakra, and at night time seeing the chakra. Now, we've got a complaint. They rang me up. I was in India. When I got back and picked up the phone, it was like really heavy. What are you guys? You don't get back to me. I've been ringing every day. You know, I consider this, you know. So I thought, geez, boy, mate, it's all over. So I went round and seen the people. And I go, what's the matter? He goes, you put a damn light in the car park. And it's shining right in our bedroom. Now, we didn't spend $1 million+ to look at your damn light. Can you move it? I said, are you complaining? He says, sure, I'm complaining. I go, nah, you're just inquiring, aren't you? This is not a complaint. So anyhow, that was a leela within itself. So I tell Krishna Chandra, and so they move it this far. And then I'm in India and I get another phone call. Are you going to do it? Then they move it down this far. And then I'm ringing up, and so this is a rasa that's been going on for about 6 months. So finally, I got the baseball bat out and just smashed the light. And I go, now it's fixed. So they're attracted. You know, we've just had many police are coming at the moment. I'm doing many interviews. They're ringing me up, and they're attracted. The council are attracted. The Prime Minister's attracted. You know, actually, I find it very hard to meet someone who is not attracted to devotees. Everywhere I go, people know I'm a Hare Krishna. I can put a hat on, hide my beads. I could put a whole sleeping bag on. and sometimes I walk and I go, how do you know? Because I can smell you. I go, is it that bad? And he says, yeah, devotees smell beautiful. And even when I go through immigration, they go, what's that smell? And that's my opening line, I'm a Hare Krishna. Oh, I knew you were a Hare Krishna. So you've got to be careful amongst yourselves, because it's only devotees that will try to stop you doing service. You know, the karmis are not stopping us, are they? Are the golf course people stopping us? Are the neighbours stopping us when we go in Harinam? Are the shopkeepers stopping us? Is the government stopping us? Is anyone trying to stop us? So when you somehow or other find a service. My service was just to see the beautiful smiling face of Shama Sundar and to clean. One day I cleaned the whole Gribblehurst Road building with a pot mix. You know those pot scrubbers? I cleaned the whole building from the bottom to the top, because I was a fanatical cleaner. What are you doing that for? Just leave it. No, I'm cleaning. And then on Sunday, after cooking the Sunday feast, I took everything out of the kitchen, everything. And I went in there with a hose and hosed the whole kitchen right down. And then at 4:30 in the morning, I was just locking up when people were coming to Mangalarati. So find a service. Find something you like to do for Krishna. Making garlands, cooking for Krishna, cleaning for Krishna, preaching for Krishna, initiating for Krishna, managing for Krishna. You know, you've got this is like the golden age. It's like the golden opportunity to serve. And we're so blessed here to serve the deities installed by one of the greatest acharyas that ever existed on the planet. Hare Krishna. Sorry for going for over time. You got lots of time. Huh? Time you have. That's my name.
That's right. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Tinamini. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Pashchacha Deshatarine. Speaking on Srila Prabhupada's Disappearance Day, I often say, is a bitter and sweet experience. To get some understanding of the impact of the departure of Krishna's pure devotee from ordinary vision, we can look at the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam and immerse ourselves in Arjuna's reaction to the departure of Lord Krishna from ordinary vision. My friend has left me alone. The person of whom a moment of separation is like all the universes becoming empty. Just for a moment of separation. Now that person is no longer present. I'm the same Arjuna. I've got the same Gandiva bow, the same chariot, but all my powers have just become null and void. Then we can go to the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Uddhava and Vidura are discussing. Vidura knows Krishna has departed, and he's asking Uddhava questions. And they're going to both remember Krishna's pastimes. When Vidura finishes his long list of inquiries, Uddhava is gone from this mortal world, in that he's situated in the spiritual world just by hearing Krishna Katha, the questions by Vidura. Uddhava is demonstrating, Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport, how the pure devotee exists simultaneously in the material world and the spiritual world. You'll get a deep understanding of that phenomenon by looking at that section of Srimad Bhagavatam. Externally, Uddhava's body is there in the material world, and he's stunned. He's frozen by ecstasy. And then after some time, he comes back to external consciousness. This is bhakti at its peak. How Krishna's dear devotee exists simultaneously in the material world and the spiritual world. This is very important for us to understand Srila Prabhupada in terms of his presence to ordinary vision and his presence beyond ordinary vision. So what was the first thing that Uddhava said when he came to external consciousness? Krishna Jumani Nimloche Gireshu Ajagarena Ha. He gave the example of the sun, the sun in the sky. He said, the sun, the Krishna sun has set, and the whole world is enveloped in darkness. What is the need for us to discuss our welfare in this situation? That's one aspect, the pain caused by separation from Krishna's pure devotee. Hearing Kalasamvara Prabhu's memories, hearing Jai Srila Prabhu speak, it brought back memories of my own. How at the time of Srila Prabhupada's departure, I was based in Los Angeles with the BBT. I had a master plan to learn everything about producing Srila Prabhupada's books. And then, you see, I knew that whoever was in charge of Prabhupada's book production always had his personal association. So after the Chaitanya Charitamrita Marathon, that famous inconceivable event in 1975, I noticed that the production manager had kind of dropped the ball. And so I thought, here's my chance. I'll learn everything about the whole book production process. And then I'll get that position, which will bring me Prabhupada's association. I'll be on every morning walk. I'll be flying off to India, to Vrindavan. Because that's what this former production manager had done. So I had it all figured out. And then indeed, by the end of 1976 into early 1977, Prabhupada started thundering. Who's in charge of my books? And he was complaining about some of the editors, not the famous His Holiness Jayadvaita Maharaj. Srila Prabhupada always expressed his trust for him. And so the explosions were getting a bit too much for the BBT trustee at that time, Rameshwar Prabhu. And so there was a panic set in. Prabhupada's not pleased. Our production manager has obviously been out to lunch for quite some time. What are we going to do? We don't want to experience Prabhupada's wrath that his book production process has been neglected. But who knows how to do all this? So the leaders, the big leaders were panicking. They could just feel Prabhupada's wrath. You can't organize, you can't manage, the BBT is my heart, you let this all go downhill. So they were scrambling. Who knows all these things? Coordinating the English department, coordinating the Sanskrit department, getting books ready to send to the printer, receiving manuscripts, checking them. Who knows all this stuff? And I just innocently raised my hand. Oh, you know this? Oh, they were so relieved. We're off the hook. We are off the hook. So I officially assumed the role that I had been unofficially doing for quite some time. And again, my motivation was, this will give me Prabhupada's personal association anytime. This will be so great. There were very few perks to the job if you think that there was some kind of material aggrandizement. No. The one perk I got was I could finally request that instead of having lunch of deep-fried Goranga potatoes, deep-fried puri, and halava, I could simply have steamed vegetables and chapatis so I could stay awake. So that was the perk. So I was ready for Prabhupada's association, but Prabhupada was in Vrindavan and his departure was becoming more and more imminent. There were questions about his manuscripts. What did you mean in this sentence? What did you mean in that paragraph? And so devotees told me, the leaders told me, you have to write Prabhupada, you're in charge. Okay, wrote my first letter to Srila Prabhupada, but by that time, Prabhupada was not answering letters, and by the time October came around, Srila Prabhupada had finished chapter 13 of the 10th canto, the Brahma Vimomana Leela, the stealing by Brahma of the cows and cowherd boys. I got that manuscript on my desk. It was couriered from Vrindavan to Los Angeles and went straight to my desk. Of course, the first thing I did when I opened the courier package was read the whole chapter. And I was just overwhelmed. Reading Prabhupada's humor. According to doctors, an ordinary person in his condition should have been in so much pain that they were crying out at every breath. And here's Prabhupada writing the 13th chapter purports in the 10th canto and making jokes about four-headed Brahma and four-headed scientists. As I read more and more of the chapter, somehow or other I knew this is the last chapter of Bhaktivedanta purports. And I had to be careful not to soak the manuscript with my tears. Somehow or other I knew this is the end of Prabhupada's appearance in this world. And sure enough, a couple of days later, around the time of Didi greeting in Los Angeles, the message came that Srila Prabhupada had departed. We heard about the reactions of Arjuna and Uddhava. The son, the Krishna son, Krishna Jumani, has disappeared. How can we speak of our welfare? How can we have any good welfare? That's one aspect. But remember, the Krishna son may disappear from your sight, just like the sun disappears at sunset, but the sun is not finished. Those who understand know the sun is always shining. Just you don't see that sunshine at night, but the sun is there. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada's departure actually gave us more opportunity for increasing our connection to Srila Prabhupada. And you have to take Prabhupada at his words. He said, if you want to know me, and I certainly wanted to know him, he said, if you want to know me, you read my books. He said, my books are better than my physical association. Another time, Srila Prabhupada said that physical association with the Guru is for neophytes. Of course, we all thought, well, I'm a neophyte then. Well, let me have it. You get as much of the Bapu, the physical association, as you can. As Kalasamvara Prabhu was describing, how he was fanning him, and then he was asked to go do something else. Because he was a humble young devotee, he did it, but now that he's a humble older devotee, he wouldn't have done it. So you take as much physical association as you can get, and then remember that somehow or other, the Vani association, the association through the instructions, is actually more intense. And that's hard to understand when you're on the material platform. On the material platform, physicality is everything. It's our hang-up. I am this body, and happiness is bodily happiness. Identity is bodily identity. But we're spiritualists. We're meant to come to the spiritual platform, and Srila Prabhupada showed us that even by his leaving the ordinary vision of this world. I remember once he explained that if you think that if you judge who is the most advanced devotee by who is closest to me physically, because that's what we all used to do. Oh, this Maharaj is close to Prabhupada, is traveling with Prabhupada. This one is Prabhupada's secretary. Oh, wow, they're certainly the most advanced devotees. And it's nice to think like that, but Prabhupada would give you a reality check. He said, if you judge who is the most advanced devotee by who is physically most close to me, then I say the best devotee is the mosquito. But what is the purpose of the mosquito? The purpose of the mosquito is to bite me. So in other words, don't be fanatical about measuring devotees' physical proximity to Srila Prabhupada. In my talk I recorded for the New York Temple and their Prabhupada Disappearance celebration, I mentioned how, along with dealing with Prabhupada's book production, I also received the task of being the one who filed all the letters from Srila Prabhupada and to Srila Prabhupada. So I got to see both sides. I remember the BBT trustee, Devamrita Prabhu, came into my office with a big box of letters. He said, Devamrita, he spoke with kind of a Brooklyn, New York accent. Devamrita, I've got these letters. They're all of Srila Prabhupada's letters. All the letters devotees have written to him and all his answers. We want you to take care of them in your office, but don't read them. I learned how to do the Indian head shake. Didn't say yes, didn't say no. So he left. He hadn't been out the door for 1 minute when Jayadvaita Das Brahmachari, he was not a sannyasi then, comes running into my office, because his office was across the hall from me. Comes running in. Okay, Devamrita, let's get into it. And so every evening after our BBT work finished, we would just read letters. So Jayadvaita Brahmachari would, after a while, he just told me, look, you read them all, and when you get to some juicy stuff, call me. So this was our life in the years leading up to Prabhupada's departure. Books and letters. By Srila Prabhupada's departure, he's pushed us to understand more intimacy. This is the great mystery of bhakti, how the Vani is even more intense and more deep than the physical association. And this lesson is preparing us for departing this world and entering Krishna's world. Srila Prabhupada ki Go Premanandi.